OPC was founded in 1939 by 9 foreign correspondents who gathered at the round table of the Algonquin Hotel. Our records indicate that $40 in dues were collected that evening and 4 bottles of whiskey were consumed. Not sure that last part's true, but too good to true. Our 9 founders included 2 notable women. Irene Kuhn, a star newspaper reporter with assignments in Shanghai and Paris at the time, and Faye Wells, who pioneered radio broadcasts from overseas, and not incidentally, was a pioneer American aviator. Not sure that last part's true, but too good to true. So, our 9 founders included. It is very fitting that tonight's program features 2 other trailblazers. Alessandra Galloni, editor-in-chief of Reuters, and Christian Amanpour, chief international anchor for CNN. And not incidentally, was a pioneer American aviator. Before we get started, I want to warmly thank our corporate partners who helped make this evening possible. They include Citi, HP, Mercedes-Benz, Sony Electronics, ABC News, the Associated Press, CNN, the Financial Times, Frontline PBS, HBO Max, the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, Newsweek, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. Special thanks also to Reuters for the wonderful pre-dinner reception, and to Bloomberg, the host of tonight's after-dinner reception. This evening would not be possible without the tireless work of Patricia Kranz, a former foreign correspondent and the OPC's executive director. Thank you, Patty. Also a big thank you to our awards chair, John Danishevsky, former chair of the Pulitzer Prize Board and standards editor for AP. And also thanks to the more than 100 jurors who helped select the work we are honoring here. As we gather this year, our community of global journalists faces towering challenges, as we all know. It's hard to believe that Russia invaded Ukraine just a little over a year ago, and hundreds of our colleagues have risked their lives to report that horrific story. And also thanks. The work is as vital as it is dangerous, and I shudder to think what the world would look like today without that courageous reporting. The concept of truth also has continued to take a beating around the world. We don't own the truth, and we don't pretend to, but what we do every minute of every day is pursue the truth. Our reporting bears witness to human tragedy and holds people and nation states to account. It's not a stretch to say that this is journalism that can and does change the arc of history. If you look at tonight's winners in the Dateline magazine at your table, you'll see just how important that is. Conflict reporting has evolved in new and powerful ways. Traditional shoe leather reporting is still important, of course. But our colleagues also have employed cutting-edge data and video technology to expose state lies. At the same time, our roll call of winners shows that we have not abandoned our responsibility to go into places that are undercover, places like Haiti and Afghanistan, to report stories that are too easily forgotten, and to do so with incredible skill, courage, and care. Nor have we taken our eye off the bigger questions of the time, among them the looming threat of climate change. I'm proud to see so many talented colleagues digging into stories that matter. Congratulations to all the winners. Now, one of the most solemn traditions on this evening each year is the lighting of a candle to honor journalists who have been killed, imprisoned, or harassed while doing their jobs. Last year, we honored journalists from Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia who battled the erosion of press freedoms and did so at great risk to themselves. We raised money at this dinner for many of you and with a kickstart from Sony Electronics to help them. OPC board members then identified 18 journalists in the region to receive those grants, providing crucial financial support to help them carry on the important work of keeping their country informed amid a collapsing infrastructure and literally the chaos of war. Among them was Oleg Suslov, editor-in-chief of a paper in Odessa. pay what he called a very modest salary to his staff and wrote powerful stories on forced migrations. Our grant, he said, was a gift from heaven. Another grant recipient, Yulia Dobogridge, was a single mother who worked at a newspaper in editor-in-chief, doing everything from writing and editing stories to laying out the pages. She lost her job as the paper struggled, but used our grant to reestablish her powerful as a freelance journalist. Let's hear from these two great journalists. Our grant, he said, was a gift from heaven. Another grant recipient, Yulia Dobogridge, was a single mother who worked at a newspaper in editor-in-chief, doing everything from writing and editing stories to laying out the pages. She lost her job as the paper struggled, but used our grant to reestablish her powerful as a freelance journalist. Let's hear from these two grant, he said, was a gift from heaven. Another grant recipient, Yulia Dobogridge, was a single mother who
Somebody get that mic.
With the beginning of the war, we all remained and our jobs, no one left Odessa, Ukraine.
Somebody get that mic.
The fulfillment of the task to provide information is under threat due to the difficult financial situation of the evening Odessa. The assistance provided by the OPC Press Club remained the newspaper to solve urgent editorial problems. We are sure
Somebody get that mic.
celebrate the victory together. Thank you for your help. God bless America. Difficult financial situation of the evening Odessa.
Мене звати Юлія Добровій, я з України. Війна стала тим днем, яким змінив життя моє і багатьох українців. Війна забрала в мене почуття безпеки і спокою. Тепер я і мій 7-річний син знаємо, як звучить вибух. Зараз я стала цінувати своє життя і життя своїх рідних набагато більше, ніж раніше. Через війну я втратила свою улюблену роботу журналіста в районній газеті, де я пропрацювала 12 років. Завдяки виграному гранту я маю змогу дистанційно працювати журналістом. За грантові кошти я придбала собі ноутбук, зарядну станцію, диктофон. Я дуже вдячна вам за це, за можливість займатися улюбленою справою. Мрію зараз про одне, щоб закінчилася війна, і я повернулася працювати до своєї улюбленої газети журналістом. Слава Україні! Перемога обов'язково буде за нами.
Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the Ambassador of Ukraine to the United States, Her Excellency Oksana Markarova.
It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here in New York with all of you. And I want to start by thanking the Overseas Press Club for this unbelievable support that you have shown to my country. From the day when you posted "We Are Kyiv Press Club," and that emblem in solidarity with Ukraine meant so much for everyone in Ukraine, to also all your campaigns to help journalists who tell the truth, who risk their lives, who right now, when we are here in New York, are on the front lines, or in Kyiv, or in Lviv, or in Odessa, in so many places in Ukraine, doing what journalists always pledge to do, to show the truth, regardless of how hard it is. I want to thank you for this Ukraine Appeal campaign in help of Oleg and Yulia. It's very important. Today, as you all know already, is 428th day of this recent full-fledged war that Russia started against us after they have invaded us in 2014. And I don't need to tell this audience, you know well about all the hardships, about all the atrocities, about all the difficulties that Ukraine goes through, but also about our resiliency and our will to fight. But I think right now we all know that journalists, brave journalists who came to Ukraine when this war started have been a game changer. Because the world could see the truth, we are able to win this war. And thank you to all of you for doing it. Please continue doing that. And I think we have to also tell everyone that not only food and energy and everything that we are talking about and weapons that you usually hear me talking about are the first need, but access to information and journalism is the first basic need that all human beings who believe in democracy have. So right now, this tragedy, of course, is not only for all Ukrainians who are fighting or civilians who have been killed, but journalists. The Mass Media Institute of Ukraine recent data shows that 52 journalists, at least 52 journalists, are already killed in Ukraine, Ukrainian and foreign. That 14 journalists have gone missing, 21 kidnapped, 17 wounded. And these numbers, unfortunately, could be much bigger because we don't know what happens on the occupied territories. But we know that more than 200 newspapers and media outlets on the uncontrolled territories already cease to exist, because that's where not only people have been killed and tortured and our children have been kidnapped, but journalists have been targeted specifically for that, specifically for just telling the truth. So let me again thank to the selfless sacrifice to all the journalists who do not hesitate on all these days to go to the battlefield, to go to difficult places, to places where they know they will be targeted for telling the truth, but they still do it. Their report sent a very strong signal that democracy and freedom of press matters, but they also sent a message that democracy and freedom of press is at risk. And we have to win this war, not only for the sake of Ukraine, but for the sake of everyone who believes in the same values. I will not recite the names of people who we lost, but I want to tell you that we all deeply respect and honor them, and every Ukrainian will always remember those journalists that died in Ukraine, fighting essentially for our cause. Some of them have been true friends, some of them I knew, and some of them have been really close home, like Brent Renaud, who used to work for New York Times, who was killed in Irpin, and my house is not far from that place, and my house was under occupation for 32 days. Or like Pierre Zakrevsky from Fox, who also was shot by Russians when he was showing the truth in Irpin. Or Max Levin, a friend of mine, Ukrainian journalist. Or my friend Vera Hurich, who I had scheduled interview for a couple days after she was killed in her apartment by the Russian missile. We can go on and on and on by thanking all of them for their ultimate sacrifice. But I think together today, we have to do everything possible so that their sacrifice will never be forgotten, so that other journalists will not only honor them, but will continue on the path of telling the truth. And that together, all of us, Ukrainians on the front lines, Americans here, and brave journalists everywhere, can inspire the future generations that after Ukraine wins, and I have no doubt that we will win this war with the help of our friends here in the United States, that after this, the light will win over darkness everywhere, and the journalists will make sure that not only they will be telling the truth, but they will hold all of us accountable, and all the government officials will know that we have to continue winning in the peace after we will win this war. So thank you again. Slava Ukraini, and God bless America.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Would you now do us the honor of lighting the candle? Let's please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We are asking again this year for donations to help us raise additional money for journalists in Ukraine. You'll find postcards at your table with instructions on several ways to donate, and we encourage you all to consider making a contribution. As we all know, there is one American journalist who tonight is being held in a Russian prison simply for doing his job. Evan Gershkovich, a 31-year-old U.S. citizen and reporter in the Wall Street Journal's Moscow bureau, was arrested while on a reporting trip last month. The U.S. government has demanded his release, as has the OPC and many organizations representing his journalism colleagues around the world. We are honored to have some of Evan's Wall Street Journal colleagues with us tonight, and I'd like to invite Almar Latour, the CEO of Dow Jones, to the podium to say a few words.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Overseas Press Club, and thank you, everyone in the audience, for the overwhelming support that all of us have felt over the past few days and weeks. Like all of you, we at the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones continue to call for Evan's immediate release. And we have teams working around the clock toward that goal, no matter how long it will take. We're grateful for your support, but we learned today that Evan, too, is grateful. Through his lawyers today, he said in a message, and I quote, "I am humbled and deeply touched by all the letters I received. I've read each one carefully with gratitude," end quote. We get all his messages through his Russian lawyers, so that's all we could offer you today. It's been inspiring to watch the global journalism community rally behind him and behind his family. Not only is Evan a distinguished journalist, but as we've all learned, he's a beloved colleague, a friend, and a son, too. He grew up down the road from here in Princeton, New Jersey, the son of immigrants who settled in the U.S. after leaving the former Soviet Union. We're in constant touch with them, Evan's parents, Ella and Mikhail, and they asked me to share this message with you all tonight. They say, "Thank you for all the support. It's touching, it helps, and it matters." Ella and Mikhail remain strong, and in spite of it all, they exude optimism because of the support and action to free their son. Evan learned Russian from his parents, and his love for their homeland led him there as a journalist, telling stories about Russia's people, its culture, and its many challenges. His reporting offered an important window into Russia. Unfortunately, in addition to losing his freedom, his wrongful detention means that there is now even less information coming out of Russia, which is not only a loss for our readers and the society, but also for the Russian people. After all of us are seeking to understand what's happening in Russia right now. As everyone in this room knows, Evan's arrest is a punch in the face of the free press. It also comes at a time when factual and reliable information has perhaps never been more important. And tonight's awards are a testament to great journalism around the world and underscore its importance. At the same time, it's clear that reporting is under attack these days, and Evan's case is only the latest in a disturbing trend. The unjust arrest of any journalist anywhere in the world is unacceptable, and so we have to continue to form a united front. We cannot rest until Evan is free, and we cannot rest until press freedom is secured. So on behalf of Evan, his family, all of his colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, thank you for standing with Evan, and thank you for standing up for journalism. Good night.
Thank you, Amar, and please know we all stand with you. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our MC for tonight's program. John Avlon is a senior political analyst and anchor at CNN. He is a host of the Reality Check segment on that network. And before joining CNN, he was editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, and he previously was a columnist and associate editor of the New York Sun. John has written several books. His latest is Lincoln and the Fight for Peace. We are proud to say that John also is an OPC vice president and member of our Board of Governors, and we are grateful for his many contributions, including his appearance tonight. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Scott. This night is always an honor to serve as MC, especially, I've got to say, tonight, not only because of all the extraordinary journalism, the heroism that we'll be honoring, the commitment to the craft of journalism, but also because my colleagues at CNN will be receiving some of these awards, and that's something I take a little hometown pride in, so thank you. We are here to celebrate excellence and integrity. You know, news is a mission-driven business, and foreign correspondents remind us of that mission. They provide moral urgency to the stories that we will look back on as defining our times. They embody integrity that comes from showing courage under fire, integrity that comes from telling other people's stories half a world away, people who might otherwise be voiceless in the corridors of power. They speak truth to power, and they hold power to account. We know that the mission in our business is under constant strain, but you foreign correspondents represent the best of us as journalists, and that's why OPC exists, to elevate and amplify your work. All right, so let's get this party started, okay? Here's how tonight's gonna go. We've got 22 awards, and each group of winners has recorded a video describing their work. I will announce the people who've gotten citations, in effect runners-up, and I will announce the winners and the judges' citations for why they're awarded. We'll hear directly from the winners, and then they will come up and get the award. You can also follow along in the Dateline book at your tables if you want to play along at home. Let's get this party started with number one, the Hal Boyle Award. This is sponsored by Norm Pearlstein in honor of his friend Jerry Flint, and it is for best newspaper, news service, or digital reporting from abroad. Now, the runner-up citation goes to Yaroslav Trofimov and James Marson of the Wall Street Journal for dispatches from Ukraine's front lines. The winners are Mstislav Chernov, Yevgeny Miloteka, Vasily Stefanovko, and Lori Hinnett from the staff of the Associated Press for erasing Mariupol. The judges said, even in a year that featured some of this generation's most compelling and essential war correspondents from the front lines in Ukraine, the judges felt the AP's coverage of the siege of Mariupol was courageous, harrowing, and indispensable, and serves as a model of what war reporting should aim to achieve. The AP team bore witness to the atrocities that would have otherwise gone untold, acts that shocked the international community, the conscience of the world, and rebuked Russian lies. Let's play the video.
Me, Yevgeny Maloletka, Mstislav Chernov.
Me, Lori Hinnett, and Vasily Stepanenko.
For 20 days in Mariupol, we witnesses of war crimes, atrocities against civilians committed by the Russian forces. And for us, it was really important to show to the country, to the world, what's happening to Ukrainians.
After Mariupol fell, the Associated Press knew that it remained important to show what was happening inside the city, even as it was cut off by the Russians. And so we continued to report on the atrocities and the war crimes that were happening in Mariupol long after Russia had seized control of the city. This was at the heart of our project, and we spent the entire year speaking to people both inside Mariupol and those who had fled the city to uncover the truth.
We want to thank our colleagues from AP who helped us for the reporting. It was really great to see how our materials were spread out, and we got really response about that. I think without that it will be really hard to continue what we are doing now.
And we're going to thank also the Overseas Press Club for your encouragement of work like ours, which is hard to do, but so very important for showing the world what is happening in places that are otherwise invisible.
All right. AP team, please come on up to accept the Hal Boyle Award. All right. Next up is the Bob Considine Award, sponsored by Bill Holstein and Reader Seville for Best Newspaper, News Service, or Digital Interpretation of International Affairs. Now, the judges chose to give 2 runner-up citations in this category. Mari Saito and a team from Reuters won for the series How Russia is Waging Its War in Ukraine, and Didi Kirsten Tatlow of Newsweek was cited for Covert China. But winning this award is Nicholas Pelham of 1843 magazine, published by The Economist, for MBS, Despot in the Desert. With 3 decades of experience in the Middle East, Pelham produced a story on Mohammed bin Salman's Saudi Arabia that is both authoritative and highly personal. It offers an excellent briefing on the politics of the Saudi kingdom while fully capturing the contradictions of a leader who, on the one hand, presents himself as a royal modernizer, giving women the right to drive, while at the same time presiding over brutal human rights abuses, including the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
I'm Nicholas Pelham, The Economist's Middle East correspondent. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for this award. I and my excellent team of editors at The Economist 1843 back in London are simply delighted. It's a testament to the months we spent traveling around the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, meeting Saudis of all walks of life from top to bottom. And it's really a story of 2 halves, one of immense progress under the young Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but also a recognition of the disregard of humanity that many of his actions have had, just the swathes of cities that have disappeared and the wars across the border. Of course, it's a story that should have been told by Saudis themselves, but they're not able to do it. And so I think that's really the role of the foreign correspondent, to speak out in their name. So thank you again to the Overseas Press Club for giving us this chance to get the story to a wider audience.
And Nicholas is here tonight to accept his award. Whoop, careful. Quick photo. You want a quick photo? Go ahead. All right. Okay. Congratulations. And now we are on to photography. The Robert Capa Gold Medal, literally gold medal, it's very cool, for exceptional courage and enterprise is sponsored by Getty Images. Now the runner-up citation goes to Adriana Zabruskas of the New York Times for Gang Warfare Cripples Haiti's Fight Against Cholera. But the Robert Capa Award was won by Marcus Yam of the Los Angeles Times for the first 30 days of the war in Ukraine. The judges said Marcus unflinchingly captured the devastation of war in Ukraine with nuance and poetry. His photographic reporting on the cruelty of the conflict is carefully curated, they said, displaying the terrors of human loss and mourning, tempered with quiet moments of survival among people who carry on, even though their world has been upended.
My name is Marcus Yam, and I work for the Los Angeles Times. I want to thank the Overseas Press Club of America for this incredible honor and for supporting the mission of journalists worldwide. When I flew to Kharkiv last year, I, like everyone else, hoped that the escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine would be resolved through diplomacy. And when it did not, all that was left to do was to stay alive, do the work, and navigate an unknown fraught with risks, senseless trauma, and also humanity. A year later, the war seems to be endless. I only hope that our work sheds dignity on the suffering that so many have endured. I'm deeply appreciative to my loved ones who sustain me, my Los Angeles Times editors who support our work, and our tenacious Ukrainian colleagues whose lives have been forever changed and upended by this war. Thank you.
Congratulations, Marcus. Come on up. Next up is the Olivier Ribot Award, sponsored by David Ake, which honors the best news photography from abroad in any medium. Now, the citation goes to Oded Bailieti of the Associated Press for The Separation Barrier. The award goes to Justina Milekiewicz of the Wall Street Journal for The War in Ukraine, Portraits of Resilience and Resistance. The judges said that in a conflict which has been covered by hundreds of photographers, her visual and storytelling style is uniquely her own. She expertly manages the most difficult challenges of news photography. Her work is both an intimate view of the lives of Ukrainians and a showcase of the larger geopolitical implications of the war.
Hi. My name is Justina Milekiewicz, and I feel very honored to receive Olivier Ribot Award for my Ukrainian work done with Wall Street Journal in 2022. Thank you, Jerry, for beautiful words describing your choice. I want to say thank you to my lead photo editor, Margaret Cady, Wall Street Journal Director of Photography, Lucy Gilmer, and Alicia Curtis in London. They all allowed me to be an author, not just an illustrator, and trusted me searching for additional stories which can add to our teamwork of Wall Street Journal covering the war in Ukraine. I believe strongly in the power of photography. It is able to shorten emotional distance between those experiencing the war and watching this from those watching this from the distance. My huge gratitude goes to people on the ground in Ukraine who shared their lives and painful experience of war with me with no hesitation. Also to committed local team, amazing reporters I work with, and my family at home. I would like to dedicate this award to dear colleague Evan Gershkovich, Wall Street Journal reporter who was unjustly detained in Russia for his journalistic work, with hope for continuous unity and support to free him by all of us who gathered here tonight. Thank you.
And Justina is here to accept her award. Now, the award for Best Feature Photography on an international theme is sponsored by Sony Electronics. Philip Chung of Maclean's magazine gets the citation for Russian invasion of Ukraine. The award goes to Laetitia Vanceau of the New York Times for Odessa is Defiant. It's also Putin's ultimate test. Each of Laetitia's images from Odessa, Ukraine, during the first year of the war feels like its own universe, the judges said. A group of dancers in the middle of a road, street salesmen sharing a glance, a woman posing in a pool for a snapshot. The photos are filled with details that emerge layer by layer and urge the reader to witness the beauty of humanity that somehow perseveres through violence and destruction.
My name is Laetitia Bonson. I'm a French photographer based in Germany. It's a great honor, and I'm deeply thankful to the jury to receive this award for my work with the New York Times in Ukraine's Odessa region last year, a symbolic and strategic place for both sides in the conflict. When we arrived nearly 6 months after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Odessa was resisting, not without being hit, but without bowing. And even danger and insecurity were never far away, life went on. My work captured quiet and simple moments through everyday scenes, where we can see how the conflict has crept into everyone's reality, and how people cling to their daily routines in order to regain a sense of normality. This is my way to show what it takes to keep on going, even in the darkest time, and the courage and resilience of a nation that chooses life and hope at all costs. Thank you to the New York Times, its director of photography, Megan Lohan, and its international photo desk, especially Gaia Tripoli and Mona Bushna. They are remarkable editors and incredible women. Thank you for your trust, your constant support, and your understanding. Thank you to Roger Cohen for the sensitivity and humanity in his narrative voice. Thank you to Aladi Dur, my fixer, without whom this work won't have been possible. And thank you for my partner for his love, which gives me strength.
Congratulations, Laetitia. And now we are going to break for the meal, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
not doing IMAG. We're still doing the same thing. It's just not the same guy. We're skipping Kraft and going to Avalon directly. Okay, I'm going to do the voice of God. I'm going to do the voice of God now. And when you hear it, just send him.
Hope everyone enjoyed their meal. We've got 6 more awards ahead and then the keynote address. I know everyone's having fun, but let's also enjoy the people we're here to celebrate and honor. Also, I'd like to remind you the online appeal is ongoing. Please take a second to do that. It makes a great deal of difference to the OPC. All right. Thank you. Up next is the Lowell Thomas Award for Best Radio, Audio, or Podcast, and it's sponsored by Deborah Amos. Now, the citation goes to Shima Olahi, staff of ESPN's 30 for 30 for Pink Card. The award goes to Ike Srisunadraja, Neroli Price, Brett Myers, Andy Donahue, from Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, and PRX for My Neighbor, the Suspected War Criminal. The judges said this piece about the failure of officials from the United States Justice Department to pursue accused international human rights violators inside America tells a riveting and surprising story in a highly accessible way. The scope is both human and global. It has compelling characters and a personal connection for the reporter. Among the highlights, they said, are interviews with federal officials who were asked whether the United States government has ever charged anyone with a war crime. Their stumbling response, the judges said, is a great example of how journalists can hold public officials to account.
I'm Ike Srisunadraja, and it is an honor to be receiving this award on behalf of Reveal, the Center for Investigative Reporting, and PRX. We spent about 6 months looking into cases of alleged human rights violators living freely inside the United States. The US government says they are pursuing leads into 1,700 of them, but only one has ever been convicted under US human rights law. And our question was why? The story, since it's been published, has been circulating among activists in Sri Lanka, was cited by human rights lawyers at The Hague, and lawmakers who have passed new legislation here in the US to fix the American response to war crimes. The story wouldn't exist if it wasn't for my editor and friend Brett Myers, our producer Neroli Price, and so many others who helped bring this topic to life on the radio. Thank you so much.
Please come on up, accept your award. All right, next up is the David Kaplan Award for Best TV or Video Spot News, sponsored by ABC News. Now, the citation is awarded to Nick Schriffrin and a team from PBS NewsHour for War in Ukraine. The award goes to CNN Worldwide for Russian invasion of Ukraine. The CNN team of numerous correspondents, producers, photographers, and translators took us live into the depths of the horrors unleashed by Russia's army from the moment the first shots were fired, the judges said, giving us frontline seats as we watched the tanks roll and artillery rounds land, tearing villages and families apart.
Thank you so much for this. I'm Matthew Chance from CNN, as you might be able to tell, in Moscow right now. It is such an incredible honor to accept this year's David Kaplan Award on behalf of all of my CNN colleagues who made such an important contribution. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, or the war as they still refuse to call it here, has challenged our understanding of the world from the outset, from when the first missiles struck the Ukrainian capital. We were all forced to reassess what we thought we knew, what the limits might be. Cities destroyed, the horrors, millions of lives disrupted, and of course countless lost. We didn't anticipate any of that. And we still don't know how it is all going to end or what dark turn Russia may take next. I want to say a special thanks to all our local staff, the journalists, the fixers, the drivers, without whom we would not have been able to do the work that is being recognised by you tonight. Thank you all very much.
All right. Congratulations, Matthew Chance is in the house. Congratulations, guys. Thank you. Congrats. All right, next up, the Edward R. Murrow Award, sponsored by CBS News, is for Best Documentary Under 30 Minutes. Now, the citation goes to Ben Solomon and his team from Vice News for Battle of Bakhmut. The award goes to Jeremy Young, Femi Oke, Lala Arian, Neil Brandvold, Jeremy Dupin, Abdullah Ba, and Warwick Mead of Al Jazeera English for Al Jazeera Fault Lines, No Country for Haitians. The judges said, Al Jazeera ventures into perilous anarchy in Haiti to report a sorely undercovered story, one with high political stakes for the United States. In one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists, the correspondents capture the daily terror and trials of her characters, showing how they're caught in a Kafkaesque immigration trap, which she contrasts with the outpouring of support for Ukrainian refugees.
Femi Oke, correspondent for the Al Jazeera English documentary series Fault Lines. For Black asylum seekers who manage to make their way to the United States, they confront a different reality than the rest. In No Country for Haitians, we tried to capture the painful experiences of Haitian asylum seekers in the past year. Thank you to all the Haitians and people who care about Haiti who spoke to us on and off camera. This award acknowledges your work and advocacy. And thanks also to the men who are trapped in prison in Port-au-Prince for their resiliency and to their families for bravely speaking out. We made this film together. To quote the motto on Haiti's flag, unity makes strength.
Jeremy, Lala, and Femi are here to accept the award. All right. Up next is the Peter Jennings Award for Best Long-Form Documentary, and it is sponsored by the Jennings family. The citation goes to Gesbian Mohammed and a team from Frontline PBS and ITV for Putin's War at Home. The winner, yes, the winner is Daniel Rohr of CNN Films and HBO Max for Navalny. The judges found Navalny, which chronicles the efforts of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny to investigate his own poisoning, compelling from beginning to end. The film captures an agent of Vladimir Putin's revealing how Russian security apparatchiks attempted to murder Navalny by Novichok poisoning. Along with director Daniel Rohr, the judges wish to honor Christo Grozev, an investigative journalist with Bellingcat, and Maria Pevchik, who heads Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation. In real time, they said, the cameras filmed them as they pored over passport databases, flight records, and cell phone bills to uncover this assassination plot. The footage is riveting and illuminating.
My name is Daniel Rohr, and I'm the director of Navalny. Right now, I am in Hawaii on my honeymoon, and the second best thing that happened to me this week is when I found out we won an OPC award for our film, Navalny. For me, winning an award in the namesake of Peter Jennings is very meaningful. I also come from Toronto. I also got my start at the CBC, and it is a tremendous honor and particular honor that I appreciate greatly. I want to thank everyone at CNN and CNN Films who helped empower this film. Few companies had the courage to walk through the fire with us, and CNN Films from the very beginning empowered our work. More than anyone else right now, I want to thank Amy and Tellis. Amy is one of the executive producers of the film, who I understand worked with Peter Jennings back in the day. And so it's very meaningful for all of us that we received this award. Amy, thank you so much for everything you did to empower this film. I'm beyond grateful. Aloha.
So as you can see, Daniel's on his honeymoon, but Christo and Amy and others are here to accept the award. Come on up. Congratulations, guys. All right. The Ed Cunningham Magazine Award is sponsored by Michael S. Serrell. And the citation goes to Juliet Macher of the New York Times Magazine for The Keeper. The winner is Lindsay Billing of ProPublica for The Night Raids. In an astounding piece of storytelling that is a blend of personal history and event reporting, she both skillfully introduces readers to a series of unforgettable characters and fills in the human drama that comprised one of the darkest legacies of the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan. Billing's own mysteries remain unsolved as the violence that touched her family gets subsumed through reporting and storytelling by the larger tragedy of modern Afghanistan under the Taliban.
My name is Lindsay Billing, and I wrote The Night Raids for ProPublica. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club of America for recognizing The Night Raids for this award. It's a huge honor, and it means a great deal to me. Congratulations to all the other winners and runners-up for their tremendous work also. This is a story about the search for answers and accountability. It's a story about the legacy of trauma that America left behind in Afghanistan, told by Afghans whose loss was never acknowledged before. And I want to thank the eyewitnesses, survivors, and families of victims who took huge risks to come forward and trust me. Kern Hendricks and Mohammed Raymond Shirzad, thank you for supporting me from the beginning. Afghanistan changed dramatically during the course of this reporting, and I know we did too. This story exists because a team of extremely talented people at ProPublica got behind it and went far beyond the call of duty to make it what it is. Thank you to Almudena Toral and Mauricio Rodriguez, Lynn Dombeck and Miriam Alba, Stephen Engelberg and Anna Donlan, and many more. But this story only really saw the light of day because a brilliant journalist and editor, Tracy Weber, took a chance on a freelancer bumping around Afghanistan. Tracy, thank you for helping me to find my voice to tell this story. It was an honor to go on the journey with you and to learn from you. I knew you were the editor I wanted to work with from the beginning, and pitching you was the best decision I ever made. Thank you.
Lindsay is here to accept the award. I love that, a freelancer and an editor, beautiful. All right, now we're on to one of the most anticipated awards every year. It is the Best Cartoon Award, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz. Now, the citation goes to Nora Krug of the Los Angeles Times for Diaries of War. The winner is Adam Ziglis of the Buffalo News. All right. Adam Ziglis sums up Putin's war on Ukraine in one terrifying image. His cartoon is an homage to Francisco Goya's Saturn devouring his son and perfectly captures the horror of Putin's war crimes. But Ziglis didn't stop there, targeting China, Iran, and the European Union with his biting satire. He submitted a portfolio of consistently high-quality cartoons, tackling a myriad of issues with spark and ingenuity, employing simple ink lines, impressive caricatures, and minimal dialogue. Ziglis brilliantly channels the old masters of art and editorial cartooning to take on the global crises of today. Congratulations, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Ziglis, staff editorial cartoonist for the Buffalo News, where I've been for the past 19 years. I'm thrilled and honored to receive the Best Cartoon Award from the Overseas Press Club of America. I'd like to thank the judges for honoring strong international journalism and for supporting the role of editorial cartooning on the global stage. Back in 2016, I served my profession as president of the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. In that role, I witnessed just how vital editorial cartooning is to freedom of expression and democracy around the world. At the time, cartoonists from around the globe, including from places like Iran and Syria, were being jailed and persecuted for speaking truth to power and for exercising their right to free speech. This oppression continues today in countries like China and Russia. I'd also like to thank my editors at the Buffalo News, Kevin and Sheila, for the support and freedom they give me to serve my readers daily and to speak out against injustice. Thank you to all of you for creating strong journalism. In an age where anti-democratic movements have been growing each year, we need each and every one of you. I'm grateful for this honor. Thank you.
Congratulations, Adam. All right, now Scott is going to come up and introduce our keynote speaker tonight.
So it's a special privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. 2 years ago this month, Reuters selected Alessandra Galloni as its editor-in-chief, the first woman to lead that global news organization in its 170-year history. Alessandra began her career in Rome, where she was born, and joined Reuters on its Italian language service after a brief stint with AP there. She left for the Wall Street Journal, where she worked for 13 years as a reporter and editor in London, Paris, and Rome. She returned to Reuters a decade ago as editor of the Southern Europe Bureau before becoming global managing editor 2 years later. She has said that she wanted to be a journalist as long as she can remember, and in fact, got her first taste of the profession by working on her middle school newspaper. Among her many accolades, we are proud to note, is an OPC Award 20 years ago tonight, in fact. She and two colleagues from the Wall Street Journal won the Malcolm Forbes Award for their coverage of the fall of the giant Italian dairy company Parmalat, which at the time was one of Europe's biggest corporate success stories. The Journal team exposed the details of a massive and amazingly crude fraud that included the disappearance of billions of euros from Parmalat's books. Today, she leads a world-class news organization, one of the world's largest, with 2,500 journalists in 200 locations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alessandra Galani.
Thank you. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for inviting me to speak this evening. And a huge congratulations to all the winners and all the citation recipients. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the brutality faced by the Ukrainian population, the repression of human rights and information, the geopolitical factions emerging from the conflict, rightly loom large over tonight's prizes. Journalists are putting their lives, their health, their freedom at risk to gather facts on the ground in order to inform the world. At least 8 journalists have been killed covering the war in Ukraine over the past 15 months, according to Reporters Without Borders. Wall Street Journal journalist Evan Gershkovich has been jailed for 4 weeks in a Moscow prison on charges of espionage. And 3 other journalists have been jailed in Russia since the start of the war, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. I'm looking for where the journal table is behind me. To my former colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, I know what a close-knit family you are and how you are all so committed and united in getting Evan out, and we all stand with you tonight and as long as he is in prison. I also want to thank the guardian angels behind the journalists, the security experts, the media lawyers, and all of the operations colleagues who work tirelessly for the security and the well-being of our reporters on the ground. On the battlefield and in the face of increasingly punitive governments and amid physical and virtual harassment against reporters, your work is indispensable. I'm looking at you, Catherine, and everyone else who is helping our journalists. As is clear from the winners tonight, despite the predominance of Ukraine in international reporting, you have all continued to shine your spotlight on other parts of the globe, on the victims and perpetrators of past and new conflicts, and on the oppressed in countries including Afghanistan, Haiti, Mexico, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria, just to name a few of the coverage areas awarded this evening. I think you will all agree that it is our collective responsibility to remain in, to return to, and not to forget places and stories around the world, even when the media focus fades and when the headlines are no longer generating clicks. But tonight, I'd like to talk about another collective responsibility of ours, and that is to systematically and unwaveringly recognize, protect, and support all the local reporters on the front lines and behind the scenes in the countries that we cover. And, you know, we should do so not just because, of course, we stand alongside fellow journalists everywhere, but because covering the world cannot be done successfully with foreign correspondents alone. Last week, I was in Perugia, and during an event at the International Journalism Festival, I was asked by a young reporter in the audience, "Are foreign correspondents a thing of the past?" And I assured her that the world is still, thankfully, full of intrepid foreign correspondents. It is true, however, that tight resources have prompted many newsrooms to cut down on permanent representation of foreigners in many countries. Governments are routinely rejecting visa applications or expelling foreign journalists as a way to avoid scrutiny of elections, of public protests, of public policy failures, such as the handling of the COVID pandemic. Governments are resorting to espionage charges to turn foreign reporters into hostages, pawns of geopolitical disputes. Now, foreign correspondents covering countries clearly bring an important, fresh perspective. Foreign correspondents often are bolder or more naive, depending on your point of view. I remember when I was, many years ago, when I was covering my native country, my country, Italy, a certain ethics and standards editor, who many of you know and is sitting right in front of me, refused to publish a story of mine until I got serious and substantive comment from the Camorra, the Neapolitan mafia. Now, I assure you that this is not something that any Italian journalist would feel very comfortable doing. Let's just say I'm still waiting for that callback. Sorry, Alex. Seriously, foreign correspondents may not have the nuance and expertise of local journalists, which have institutional knowledge, language subtlety, cultural understanding. Globalization has forced greater levels of transparency around international news, and this means that there's greater pressure on us to deliver accurate, fair, and accountable news from everywhere. And not just in the capitals of the countries where we are headquartered. And so this means that more of us are employing local reporters across the countries that we cover. Also, as social media, as user-generated content have given us a direct view into events on the other side of the world, audiences are demanding more insight than the bird's-eye view of foreign correspondents. At the OPC, the number of local journalists being recognized alongside foreign correspondents has risen over the years. Today, as you've seen, Mitislav Chernov, Evgeny Maloletka, and Vasilia Stefanenko, three of the reporters, along with Lori Hinand, who won for erasing Mariupol, the brave and harrowing testimony of a city under siege. They're Ukrainian nationals. They're covering war in their own country, alongside their own families. Not only Jeremy Dupin, a Haitian national, is part of the Al Jazeera team that won for their work covering the lives of Haitians deported from the US. Simpa Sampson from Nigeria is part of the Bloomberg News team that received a citation for Black Snow, Nigeria's oil catastrophe. When journalists work in their own countries for foreign media, the risks are high. Local reporters do not have the cloak of protection offered by a foreign passport. Of the 363 journalists currently jailed around the world, this is the highest level in 30 years, according to CPJ. 354 are being held in their own countries. Many countries have retorted to trumped-up charges, tax evasion, drug use, smuggling, hooliganism against their own. The list is long. Among them, Maria Ressa in the Philippines, Khadija Ismailova in Azerbaijan, Roman Protasevich in Belarus. More recently, there's Arton Prokhorov in Russia, who has been detained since last summer for allegedly extorting around $1,000 from a local businessman. Jose Ruben Zamora, president of the Guatemalan newspaper El Periódico, is in pretrial detention for alleged money laundering. Even without legal trouble, local journalists often face harsh attacks for their brave work in their public interest. Our late colleague, the photographer Danish Siddiqui, whom you recognized so beautifully here last year, spent months photographing the true toll of the COVID pandemic in his native India. Abroad, you knew him for his poignant, devastating images. In India, he faced government pushback, online trolling, and public criticism. In many instances, he was called a traitor. Because they often report on subjects that they wouldn't be able to tackle for their national media, local journalists are often not recognized for their work in bylines and in prizes. I wish I could tell you about all the tireless, brave work of so many journalists at Reuters, whose names we regularly keep off coverage, in countries including Nigeria, Venezuela, Egypt, Yemen, China, Russia. Think of Chinese colleagues in China and Vietnamese colleagues in Vietnam working for our news organizations. They can only be referred to as news assistants and cannot operate independently as journalists. When foreign journalists pack up because it's too dangerous to stay, they lose the story. When local reporters flee their own countries, they lose their homes, their livelihoods, their social ties, their culture. You will remember Wallon and Chassau, whom you also recognized here over the years, who spent more than 500 days in jail in Myanmar before they were released. I'm unable to return to my country, and many of my colleagues are in exile since the 2021 coup, Wallon said to me recently. Myanmar is a stark reminder of the importance of protecting freedom of the press. Think of Russian colleagues working for our news organizations and for Russian media. Many have fled their country since the beginning of the war, and it is unlikely that they will be able to return. For starters, their homes have likely been impounded for evading Russia's draft. The intensifying crackdown on press freedom the world over has created a new breed of exiles, journalists who dared report dangerous truths. For us at Reuters, reporters operating in their own countries are the heart of our operation. As a news agency, our responsibility, our obligation is to be on the ground, and we employ journalists of 90 nationalities and operate in 16 languages. We try not to have a foreign perspective, rather a global one. We don't operate a foreign desk, foreign to where. This approach forces us to have a deep, nuanced commitment to diversity among our people and in the voices of those we cover. Because diversity means something different for everyone in our newsroom. It also means that the potential to be a foreign correspondent should be available to everyone around the world. We believe that being at the source of news before, during, and after others fold their tents is an integral ingredient to remaining neutral. And this is true even in countries considered rogue or pariah by the international community. It is not easy, but the approach is based on the belief that if a voice, any voice, is silenced, the world is worse off. I was struck when I read Myčislav's first-person account of his 20 days in Mariupol under siege, which was part of the winning entry. He describes the effort by the Russian army to cut off all information. And he writes, "The absence of information in a blockade accomplishes two goals. Chaos is the first. People don't know what's going on and they panic. At first, I couldn't understand why Mariupol fell apart so quickly. Now I know it was because of the lack of communication. That's why we took such risks to be able to send the world what we saw. And that's what made Russia angry enough to hunt us down. I have never, ever felt that breaking the silence was so important." Thank you to all of those journalists who break the silence every day around the world. And thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Alessandra. And now back to John.
Okay. Now, the Morton Frank Award for Best International Business News Reporting in TV, video, radio, audio, or podcast, which is sponsored by Mark Lemke. Now, the judges issued 2 citations, Matt Goldman, Katarina Glanz, and a Bloomberg News team for Black Snow, Nigeria's oil catastrophe. And Patricia Nielsen, Alex Barker of the Financial Times for Hot Money, Porn, Power, and Profit. Some alliteration right there. The winners are David Scott, Cho Park, Evan Simon, John Carlos Frey, Cindy Gali, Candace Smith-Chekwa, and Eamon Veronica of ABC News for Impact X Nightline, Caffeine Jungle. Now, the judges said, well, you could applaud them, give them a little love. There you go. The judges said not many American coffee drinkers think about how the purchase of ethically certified coffee actually improves the lives of those on the plantations, or whether it does. The ABC team journeyed to the mountains of Chiapas, Mexico, to see if conditions at certified farms match the pledges made to consumers by Fair Trade International and the Rainforest Alliance. 3 rainforest farms where ABC documented coffee picking by child labor lost their certifications. At Fair Trade Farms, the investigation showed that even the hardest working farmers struggle to get fair prices for their coffee, despite Fair Trade's efforts to establish a minimum price. The story, they said, highlights the gap between selling consumers idealism and real life at the beginning of the coffee supply chain.
Hi, I'm Evan Simon.
And I'm Cho Park.
And we're investigative producers with ABC News, currently on assignment in beautiful Peekskill, New York.
We are so grateful for this incredible award and want to thank the OPC for this honor.
We had an incredibly ambitious project, but thankfully we had a remarkable team of journalists with us the entire journey.
It really was a team with our correspondent David Scott, senior editorial consultant John Carlos Frey, senior producer Candace Smith, as well as our editors Scott Levy and Faith Jones, and executive producers Cindy Gali, Chris Blasto, and Iman Baroka.
We also know we would not be here without the tireless efforts of Kirat Radia, Kim Godwin, Tomas Navia, Sarah Avery, Kate Holland, and Alex Myers. We also owe a huge debt to our colleagues in Mexico at Cactus Media, Bernabe Leo Salinas, Fabio de la Vega, Anne Laurent, and Juan del Dios Darvish.
We share this honor with you all.
We also want to thank the Chiapas farmers who opened their lives and their homes to us. We can only hope that our reporting benefits not just us, but also allows folks to understand the true price of coffee.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Love it. Congratulations, guys. All right, next up is the Malcolm Forbes Award for Best International Business News Reporting in Print or Digital, and it is sponsored by Forbes magazine. Now, there are no citations for this award, but the winners are Debbie Senzipper, Will Fitzgibbon, Ava Herskowitz, Delphine Reuter from ProPublica, as well as the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, and more than 50 international media organizations and Northwestern University for Shadow Diplomats, the global threat of rogue diplomacy. Now, the judges said this is a problem that spans 168 governments, reaching from Detroit to Finland to Paraguay. The ICIJ discovered that more than 150 current or former consuls have been accused of tax evasion, fraud, bribery, and money laundering, while others were tied to violent crimes and environmental abuses. The judges were impressed by the project's ambition and scope, connecting court records, news reports, public policy documents, and government reports from points all around the globe. And the project had an impact, including moves by Paraguay, Finland, and Brazil to investigate the consuls and the systems that had long protected their power.
I'm Will Fitzgibbon, a reporter with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists.
I'm Debbie Sensiper, and I write for ProPublica.
The Shadow Diplomats investigation was a project that for the first time took a deep look in every country on Earth at the little-known honorary consul system.
This really was a story about a hidden global network of diplomats all around the world that had done some pretty bad things, and nobody had really done a deep dive into how honorary consuls worked around the world. And so ProPublica collaborated with ICIJ and vice versa. We both collaborated with Northwestern University and with partner organizations in 46 countries.
In many of those countries, reporters wrote about some of the most powerful people in their countries. They faced lawsuits, they faced threats of intimidation. So this award is also a recognition of their work, and I would certainly like to recognize their courage in joining us for this collaboration.
For this niche subject of honorary consuls to get this kind of attention in an otherwise incredibly busy news year was particularly meaningful to us, and we're very grateful.
Debbie and Will are here to accept their award. Great job. The Cornelius Ryan Book Award is up next, and it's sponsored by the Friends of Richard Threkold. Now, the citation goes to Louisa Lim of Riverhead Books for Indelible City, Dispossession and Defiance in Hong Kong. The winner is William Newman for, and I love this title, Things Are Never So Bad That They Can't Get Worse, Inside the Collapse of Venezuela, published by St. Martin's Press. Newman's book is a devastating account of the collapse of the economy and political system of a once wealthy Latin American petrostate. Prior to his 2013 death, strongman Hugo Chavez spent billions to buy and build industries and then starved them of investment. He allowed widespread corruption and soaring inflation. Newman's vivid reporting never lets the reader forget how the lives of ordinary Venezuelans have been crushed by this man-made disaster, and how the misrule of the current Maduro regime has corrupted Venezuela's society to its very roots.
I'm William Newman, and I wrote the book, Things Are Never So Bad That They Can't Get Worse, Inside the Collapse of Venezuela. I was very moved as I was getting ready to make this video because I happened to speak by telephone with Hilda Solórzano, who was one of the women that I profiled in the book. When I first got to know Hilda, she was living in a one-room tin shack in a Caracas slum with her 7 children. There was no food in the house, and the family lived in the midst of just crushing poverty, malnutrition, and violence. When I spoke to Hilda this week, she was giddy with happiness because one of her daughters was graduating high school. I also spoke to her daughter, Samaris, who told me that she plans to be the first person in her family to attend university and that she wants to study to become either a physical therapist or an architect. And I thought it was very moving to discover that even in a country that has been devastated, both socially and economically, a young woman like Samaris can still dream of either going into a caring profession or of working to rebuild. So I want to dedicate this award to Hilda, to her children, and to all the ordinary Venezuelans who dream of living in a better country. I want to thank the Overseas Press Club, the judges of the Cornelius Ryan Award, George Whitty, my editor at St. Martin's Press, David Villano, my agent, and most especially Jean James for her tremendous support and love. Thank you.
He's here to accept his award. Congrats. All right, the Madeline Dane Ross Award, sponsored by Linda Fasulo, is for Best International Reporting in Print or Digital Showing a Concern for the Human Condition. The citation goes to Juliet Linderman and the team from the Associated Press for Afghan Couple Accuses U.S. Marine of Abducting Their Baby. The winner is Sarah Sully of The Atavist magazine for A Matter of Honor. With scant clues and ironclad determination, reporter Sarah Sully set off on a years-long investigation into the execution-style killings of 3 Afghan refugee women on the Greek-Turkish border. With this vividly told saga reveals how at every step the resilience and small acts of ordinary people kept the case alive despite myriad hardships and geopolitical obstacles that could have easily rendered these women forgotten. Like the characters she encountered, Sully refuses to give up until the mystery is solved and the slain women receive some measure of justice.
My name is Sarah Sully, and I'm a freelance journalist. In 2018, 3 dead bodies turned up on the Greek-Turkish land border. Almost no one paid attention to the story, but these were 3 women, a mother and her 2 teenage daughters from Afghanistan, who had been murdered just a few yards into the supposed safety of Greece. When I started reporting this story for The Atavist, I had no idea it would turn into a multi-year, multi-country investigation that would take me through underworlds and show me the real, frustrating limits of our profession. The treatment of refugees and asylum seekers in Europe is a stain on our collective conscience. It is my hope that writing this piece could bring a modicum of justice to Fahima, Farzana, and Rabia. I'd like to thank the Incubator for Media Education and Development in Athens for their support and the whole staff at The Atavist magazine, particularly my editor, Sayward Darby. A very special thank you to my Afghan colleagues without whom reporting this story would have been impossible, Tabshir Khwega Aminullah, and my colleagues who chose to remain anonymous. I'd also like to thank my parents, who are both immigrants themselves and who have always shown me that thinking with your heart is sometimes the smartest thing you can do.
Congratulations, Sarah. Another freelance winner, by the way. The David A. Andelman and Pamela Title Award, sponsored by David and Pamela, is for Best International Reporting in the Broadcast Media Showing a Concern for the Human Condition. The citation goes to Havovi Cooper and the staff of Insider for Risky Business. The winners are Ramita Navai, Karam Shah, and Eamon Matthews of Frontline PBS for Afghanistan Undercover. When the Taliban seized control of Afghanistan in August 2021, the group said its government would respect women's rights. In Afghanistan Undercover, the Frontline team documented a very different and harrowing reality. Often working covertly, they spoke to women jailed by the Taliban without trial, interviewed women in abusive marriages who had attempted suicide, and uncovered evidence of Taliban soldiers forcibly marrying young girls. While much of the world's attention has moved on from the story, Afghanistan Undercover documents the very real ongoing crisis for women inside one of the world's cruelest totalitarian regimes.
Thank you so much from me, Ramita, and executive producer, Eamon Matthews. Huge thanks to the brilliant Rainey Aronson-Roth, Andrew Metz, and the entire team at Frontline. This award is really important to us because it's an opportunity to keep talking about the situation for women in Afghanistan, which our investigation found to be far worse than we all imagined, and which, as we know, is only getting worse. Biggest thanks, of course, goes to our incredible Afghan team who risked their lives to get this story out. And also thanks to every single brave, inspiring female Afghan activist we filmed with and we spent time with. And I want to end with a message from one of them. She's called Arifa Batul. And she's asked me to ask you to please not forget the women of Afghanistan, because she says we now are her only hope. Thank you so much.
Ramin, Karaman, Ayman are here to accept the award. The Joe and Lori Dine Award for Best International Reporting in any medium dealing with human rights is sponsored by Philip Dine. Now, the citation goes to the staff of the Wall Street Journal for war crimes in Ukraine. The winner is the staff of the New York Times for war crimes at Bucha. With compelling reporting, the New York Times unraveled a human rights tragedy, giving voice to the victims of the Ukraine war while exposing the ruthlessness of its perpetrators. This package of stories, including a meticulously reported 28-minute documentary, summoned the propulsive narrative style of courtroom drama to detail the murders of civilians. The journalists relied on databases, cell phone videos, 4,000 intercepted phone calls, and on-site investigations to reconstruct how Russian brigades unleashed a premeditated atrocity in Bucha. They found that the 234th Guards Air Assault Regiment killed dozens of innocents as the streets became a map of misery and death. The series linked victim and killer with Russian soldiers calling home on the smartphones of Ukrainians they murdered. As a whole, the judges say, this package makes an airtight war crimes case against Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Hi, I'm Yusra Al-Hilou. And I'm Masha Frolik. We're reporters with the New York Times, and we've been reporting from Ukraine for over a year now. We're currently in Kherson, and we're sad that we can't be with you tonight in person.
We wanted to personally thank the OPC for recognizing this important work. We hope that it brings justice to the families of the victims along Yablonska Street. When we arrived in Bucha exactly a year ago, we quickly realized that it was one big crime scene. Russian authorities called the pictures of dozens of bodies along Yablonska Street a hoax. So we decided to identify each victim along the street and the military unit responsible for killing these people.
We coupled traditional field reporting skills with visual investigations and open source. That meant knocking on countless doors and collecting footage from back alleys and bunkers, but also mapping and analyzing the countless hours of footage we were collecting from the field. So along with our colleagues Christoph Kettle, Haley Willis, Dima Kovin, Malaki Brown, and others, we spent 8 months pursuing the evidence that proved that the killings along Yablonska Street were part of a systematic effort of one regiment, the 234th Regiment, as they were clearing their path to Kyiv.
We would like to thank our managers who made this reporting possible, including Mark Scheffler, Whitney Hurst, and Hanan Sarhan, as well as editors across the New York Times who supported our month-long work. Thank you.
Here to accept the award is Malachi Brown, Dmitry Kovin, Christoph Kotti, and Mark Scheffler. And more. Congratulations. And now I invite Scott back to the stage to present the President's Award to a person I am delighted to call a friend and a colleague, CNN's Christine Annemhor.
So the life of a war correspondent has never been easy. It requires steely nerves, of course. The logistics can be daunting and danger real. It also requires a deep understanding of the world and an ability to focus, to ask tough questions in high-pressure settings, and to find the stories behind the stories. Christiane Amanpour, tonight's recipient of the President's Award, is one of the leading war reporters of this or any generation. She has covered the genocide and war. She has covered genocide and war in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. She has reported from every part of the world over the course of 4 decades and produced award-winning documentaries and in-depth specials. She also has put numerous world leaders on the spot in tough interviews. Christiane has said that her desire to be a journalist was kindled by her family's firsthand experience with trauma. Her father was an Iranian travel agent, and the family left Iran after Saddam Hussein invaded in 1980, following the Islamic Revolution. They lost everything they owned in Iran. She earned a degree in journalism from the University of Rhode Island and worked for an NBC affiliate in Providence before CNN hired her as an assistant on the international news desk. She soon moved to CNN's New York City bureau as a producer-correspondent, and from there to the Frankfurt bureau in the midst of the pro-democracy movement then underway in Europe. Many of us remember her illustrious work from her next assignment, covering the Persian Gulf War from the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait to the victory of the US-led coalition. She has won awards for her journalism and her dedication to journalistic freedom. And yes, she also has won an OPC award for her work covering the Arab Spring for ABC News, as well as several citations. She is currently Chief International Anchor for CNN and host of CNN International's nightly interview program, Amanpour. She is also host of Amanpour & Company on PBS. I am pleased to give this year's President's Award to one of the world's most respected journalists, Christiane Amanpour.
Thank you very much indeed. I was incredibly honored, obviously, to be asked to accept this and to be told that I was accepting it, given how I know the illustrious predecessors that have come before me and all this amazing work that's being honored here this evening. But when my friend John Avlon asked me whether I would be available to come from England for this, I of course said, yeah. I did not know that it would be this kind of week in the media capital of the world. We have seen a lot of accountability, we've seen some firings, we've seen some settlements, and we have learned something this week. We have learned that truth matters, that misinformation and disinformation are not okay, and they will be held accountable. We have learned that sexism and misogyny is not okay. And we have learned tonight especially, and by the work all our colleagues do, that this noble profession, this craft of journalism, from the local to the global, to the war zones, to wherever people tell stories, is truly one of the most important professions in the world. Therefore, and we know that really good journalism matters and can make a difference. So I want to start by quoting a true media revolutionary, the person who created the media revolution of the 20th century and who just happens to be our founder and, for a long time, my boss. This is what he said: "To act upon one's convictions while others wait, to create a positive force in a world where cynics abound, to provide information to people where it wasn't available before, to offer those who wanted a choice, for the cable industry whose pioneering spirit caused this great step forward in communications, and for those employees of Turner Broadcasting whose total commitment to their company has brought us together today, I dedicate the news channel for America, the Cable News Network." That was Ted Turner, June 1st, 1980. That is 43 years ago, as he created, as I said, the 20th century media revolution. And I was reacquainted with that dedication when I visited CNN's Washington bureau not long ago for an interview that I was doing there, and I saw it on the wall, and I was so glad to see it there. Of course, 5 years later, he made CNN the news channel for the world. And that short dedication has everything in it: get up and go, do the right thing, purpose and mission, offering choice, seeking truth. It marks the brave new world industry, and that is, of course, what America is all about, the innovation, and a company with employees who are all in. I've been all in from the moment I hopped on the Ted Turner bandwagon. Ted's other great admonition was to lead, follow, and get out of the way. I visited Ted in Georgia this past weekend, and I asked him about all the ways that he was ahead of the curve and how he got there, not just in the media, but leading on climate and conservation, private philanthropy, bringing superpowers together at the height of the Cold War with his goodwill games. And then, after the Soviet Union fell apart, creating the Nuclear Threat Initiative in order to corral loose nukes and keep our world safer. I wanted to know, and I asked him, what motivated him? And he told me that he had always tried to do the right thing. Simple enough. So I found trying to do the right thing as a journalist to be a mission to tell stories and to try to create a relationship between the people and the events that we covered and our audience, between our audience and the world, so that they would know and they would care, and they would then perhaps be able to make a difference. To expose injustices, the inequities, the human rights abuses, to give the invisible their chance to be seen and heard. I really believe foreign correspondents matter, even though we're not allowed to say foreign at CNN. Ted banned that word a long time ago. We say international. I really believe we matter. Sure, we rely and we need all the people who we meet in the field and who work for us work with us rather, as has been correctly acknowledged tonight. But it matters that we get up from the free and democratic world and take our mission and our passion around to walk the walk, to talk the talk, and to tell the stories that everybody needs to see. And we know that good journalism, as I said, is vital. And when we do it well, it makes a difference. And when we confuse our roles and our responsibilities as journalists, it also makes a difference, but very much for the worst. All the journalists killed and wounded and imprisoned on the job, as we noted tonight, and as that beautiful candle lit by the ambassador of Ukraine very poignantly, speaks to the incredible risks and the sacrifices that everyone makes. And tonight we join in the call for the immediate release of Evan Gershkovich of the Wall Street Journal, who is wrongfully imprisoned by Russia. Just to say, in the stories that I've covered in the field this past year, I am so utterly impressed and inspired by the spirit of Ukraine. I reported something similar, a little smaller, but nonetheless, the first genocide in Europe since World War II, which was in Bosnia, for all those years. And we watched then as the world didn't really move. They didn't really intervene quick enough, even though we were all there telling this story every single day. It was on the front page of every newspaper and magazine. It was on the A block of every single news organization, television, radio. It took a long, long time for the world to intervene and do the right thing and stop a genocide in the 20th century as they saw it on global satellite television. And so I'm really pleased for the people of Ukraine that the world has recognized much, much earlier that this has to be stopped. And for the good of humanity, for the good of democracy, for the good of the rules of the international law and order that we all believe in, we have to keep telling this story, and we can never get tired of telling this story, and the Ukrainian people have to win. For the people and the women of Afghanistan, my heart breaks. For the women of Iran, my heart breaks. I'm so glad that their stories are still being told. The bravery is just incredible. It is unimaginable to us sitting here, except of course for all the people who've been and told the stories, the kind of bravery it takes to keep living, to keep your hopes up under unspeakable and appalling and illegitimate and unjust oppression as the women of the world, particularly in those countries I mentioned, are undergoing. So let me finally take the opportunity to thank my dedicated and brilliant team, because it takes teamwork to make the dream work. I want to acknowledge the amazing global platform that CNN affords our journalism and the fantastic partnership that my show has with PBS to spread this journalism all across the United States. I was reminded recently by a friend, as if it's not blindingly obvious all around us, of the philosopher who said many years ago that the sign of a society in decay is when language and action get separated from the truth. And therefore, it is our responsibility to double down. Thank you so much. I'm deeply, deeply honored. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you.
So well deserved. All right. Can we just get one more round of applause for that woman? She's extraordinary. Legend. All right, we're almost at the end. 4 more to go by my count. The Whitman Basso Environment Award is up next, and that's sponsored by Robert Serio. The citation goes to the staff of Bloomberg Green for big plastics. But wait, the award also goes to Bloomberg Green. The term of Max de Halvang, Ashkat Ratti, Natasha White, Dimitrios Pogas, Verity Radcliffe, Ben Englund, and Sinduja Rajirjan, who won for exploiting carbon offsets. So Bloomberg Green took on this complex topic of carbon offsets, the system that allows companies to continue emitting their own greenhouse gases while paying others to reduce their emissions. The reporters, though, analyzed more than 200,000 transactions and showed how dozens of companies are using questionable accounting to claim carbon neutral status. One story shows how oil giant BP exploited workers in rural Mexico by paying them very little and then using the savings to offset the company's emissions. The reporters also revealed how organizers of the World Cup in Qatar attempted to compensate for that event's enormous carbon footprint through a dodgy Doha-based certification body that signed off on projects that routinely failed to meet minimum standards. Judges believe this project stood out as an eye-opening examination of an issue that could make or break the effort to slow climate change.
Hi, I'm Max de Halvang, a reporter with Bloomberg. Thank you so much for the recognition of the stories in this package, which showed the worrying frailty of big companies' claims of climate progress. The investigations by myself, Akshat Ratti, Natasha White, Dimitrios Pogas, Verity Radcliffe, Ben Elgin, and Sinduja Rangarajan all took months, involving dozens of sources, far-flung travel, and scouring hundreds of thousands of lines of data. The team exposed hundreds of companies making false emissions claims via accounting tricks and useless carbon offsets, showed how the Qatar World Cup partnered with a company that flogs worthless carbon credits, and revealed that BP paid Mexican subsistence farmers a fraction of offsets' market value. Thank you again for the award, and a huge thanks to all our editors at Bloomberg Green. We're thrilled to shine a spotlight on this sometimes unglamorous but utterly crucial topic.
To just returned from his honeymoon, it's a theme tonight, and several members of the team are here to accept the award. Up next is the Robert Spears Benjamin Award for reporting on Latin America, and it's sponsored by Lori Hayes. The citation goes to Catherine Porter and a team from the New York Times for The Roots of Haiti's Misery. The winners are Terrence McCoy and the staff of the Washington Post for The Amazon Undone. Terrence and his team produced a 6-part series showing that the destruction of the Amazon is approaching the point of no return. The stories combine on-the-ground reporting with data journalism and satellite imagery. We learn, among other things, how beef illegally raised in the Amazon ends up on your dinner plates here in America. McCoy vividly describes the lawlessness by settlers and the deadly consequences faced by those trying to stop it. Among them, his friend Dom Phillips, who was murdered along with indigenous rights defender Bruno Pereira while investigating illegal fishing and logging. McCoy's reporting represents the best of what foreign correspondents can do to address the world's injustices.
My name is Terry McCoy, and I am the Rio de Janeiro Bureau Chief for the Washington Post. Thank you to the Overseas Press Club for this extraordinary honor. None of these stories would have been realized without the support and help of my colleagues at the Washington Post. I want to thank Rafael Vilela, Rafael Alves, and Alexandre Cruz Noronha, who traveled with me and created breathtaking photography and videos. Julie Ledor, John Muskins, and Simone Ducroquet for their graphics, and Cecilia Gilago for data reporting. I also want to thank my editors, Matt Brown, Doug Gell, and Cameron Barr, as well as Chloe Coleman, Alexa Juilliard, Allison Mann, Julie Witkowskaya, Jay Wang, Megan Oyer, Reinaldo Chavez, Vanessa Larson, and Martha Murdoch for invaluable contributions. And in particular, my deep-felt appreciation for Gabriela Sapessoa, who helped research every story. The Amazon feels very far away in New York City, but what is happening there has an impact all over the world. And thank you to the Overseas Press Club for recognizing the importance of this story, and thank you to the Washington Post for giving me the resources to chase one of the biggest stories of this time. This award means the world to me. Thank you.
Here to accept the award is Doug Gell, foreign editor of the Washington Post. The Kim Wall Award for Creative Digital Storytelling is sponsored by Ginger Thompson. The citation goes to Sophia Jones and a team from Rolling Stone and Starling Labs for The DJ and the War Crimes. The winners are Jacqueline Charles, Jay Weaver, Antonio Delgado, Michael Wilner, and the staff of the Miami Herald for Made in Miami, How a Plot to Oust a President led to a murder in Haiti. It's a great story. This is a sweeping and deeply reported package on what really happened before, during, and after the assassination of Haiti's president in July 2021. During multiple trips to Haiti, correspondent Jacqueline Charles gained access to the National Penitentiary in Port-au-Prince to land the first extensive interviews with 2 key suspects in the killing. The Herald's richly illustrated account relied on extensive interviews, police records, and court filings to create an interactive graphic experience that allowed readers to click and see how and where suspects were connected. It actually began as a graphic project and then became in-depth investigative journalism. Extraordinary.
It really is a pleasure and a huge honor to get this award from the Overseas Press Club, especially in a year where there was so much great, wonderful, intriguing foreign, journalism, and so to be able to get this award, that's a big honor.
What we really aim to do was take this massive canvas of this assassination investigation and make it explainable in a very compelling way, almost like a digital novel. It's all these moving parts brought together in a way that's digestible for people to see online, and it's compelling in the way that it's written. And our editor Casey Frank kind of brought it all together, which is the way he does things. He's just a really skilled editor in that regard.
Thank you very much for recognizing our work and recognizing our commitment to this story.
Jacqueline is here to accept the award. The Roy Rowan Award for Best Investigative Reporting is sponsored by his son, Marcus. Now, the citation goes to Paul Cartson and a team from Reuters for Nightmare in Nigeria. The winners are Erica Kienetz, Michael Bisecker, Richard Lardner, Beatrice Dupuis, Sarah Eldib and the staff of the Associated Press, and Tom Jennings, Annie Wong, and the staff of Frontline PBS for Putin's attack on Ukraine, documenting war crimes. Based on hundreds of hours of surveillance videos, audio recordings, and interviews, this horrifying account documents in graphic detail the atrocities committed by Russian troops on civilians in the suburban Kyiv town of Bucha. Supplementing the interviews, the Associated Press and Frontline team used cutting-edge open-source techniques, satellite and drone imagery, hours of CCTV footage, and intercepted phone calls to reveal the brutality of the Russian occupation. Russian soldiers indiscriminately shoot civilians, a man riding his bicycle, a 19-year-old boy taken from his home, a column of 8 men, their hands tied behind them, being marched to their deaths. Among the most chilling revelations were transcriptions of telephone calls made by Russian soldiers to family and friends in Russia, telling them about the civilians they've just slaughtered.
I'm Erica Kienetz from the Associated Press. When Russia invaded Ukraine, each day news of a fresh tragedy would flash before our eyes. People's lives irrevocably changed. And then those stories would vanish, lost under the next wave of suffering. We wanted to create a space where they could accumulate, where we could begin to document not just what we were seeing, but the patterns behind what we were seeing. Doing that required a tremendous team effort, and we are deeply grateful to our partners at Frontline and C2 Research and the whole crew at the Associated Press. Ron Nixon, Alison Kojak, Jeannie Ohm, Mary Rajkumar. In Ukraine, Sasha Stashevsky and Solomia Hera. Around the world, Mike Bisecker, Richard Lardner, Beatrice Dupuis, Sarah Eldib. Finally, a deep, deep thanks to the people in Ukraine who trusted us with their stories, reliving some of their darkest moments so that they could contribute to the public record and establish what is true. Thank you.
Thank you, OPC, for this tremendous honor. On the day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I was in Budapest with colleagues Annie Wong and Tim Grucha. We were there doing another film all together. Immediately, we stopped everything and began journeying to Ukraine with Erica Kienetz, whose early reporting for the Associated Press had focused on what happens when international law is flouted and civilians become the targets of the military. The end result was Putin's attack on Ukraine, documenting war crimes. It was a tremendous collaborative effort, and I want to thank the AP and Eric in particular. But I also want to recognize the folks in the field with me. Annie Wong, the co-director of the film, Tim Grucha, Scott Anger, Taras Lazar, and Roman Sinchuk. In Boston at Frontline, there were many people, including Megan McGaw-Christian, Frank Kewen, Andrew Metz, and especially Rainey Aronson-Rath, executive producer and editor of Frontline, who sent us to Ukraine, had our backs every day we were there, and guided the film throughout. I would also like to thank and recognize Tanya Boykov, Ivan Skiba, and Katrina Prikodko, 3 people who led us into their lives and showed us the amazing and dramatic costs and consequences of what happens when war crimes are inflicted on the civilian population. Thank you again, OPC.
Big team. I love it. Love to see a collaborative effort. All right, that brings us to the last award tonight, the Flora Lewis Award for Best Commentary, which is sponsored by Paula Dwyer. The citation goes to Yaroslav Tremofov of the Wall Street Journal for explaining Russia's war. The winner is Li Guan of the New York Times for The New World, and she has won an OPC award previously. The judges said Li Guan provided fascinating insight into how China's zeroed COVID policies affected the daily lives of people and the morale of a nation. Her clear-eyed reporting and interviews, combined with her astute analysis and commentary, offered an indispensable window into the consequences of a pandemic that changed the world and which has permanently altered Chinese society.
I want to dedicate this award to all the Chinese people who took enormous personal risks speaking with me last year. Their courage helped the world understand what the Chinese government did to its own people. They were threatened, beaten up, and jailed for protesting against the tyranny of the Chinese government, and sometimes for just sharing their sufferings with the world. Thank you. I also want to thank my editor, Adrian Carter, for letting me be me, letting me write from the bottom of my heart, and for helping me find my voice. Thank you, Adrian.
Congratulations, Lee. And that is a wrap on the 2023 OPC Awards. Citation winners, please pick up your citations at the head table, and I'm going to turn it back to Scott to close it out.
Thanks, John. Before we move to the after party hosted by Bloomberg, I would like to take a moment to ask you once again to consider making a donation to support Ukrainian journalists who we have heard this evening have been crucial to the success of much of our own reporting. The information is on the screen behind me and on the cards on the table. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much, and good night.